Da 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 da. Welcome to Disenfranchised. I'm Karen Bulinski Mathison with the Naked Grief, and I am here with the Disenfranchised podcast, where we dissect friends one episode at a time to explore the losses that don't get casseroles or sympathy cards, known as disenfranchised grief. The grief that nobody talks about, the kind that shows up in a TV show and makes you feel less alone. Season 2 is where things get a little bit meatier in the relationship department, where the stakes feel real and where we start seeing grief that looks less like someone died and more like my entire world just shifted and nobody's acknowledging it. The first episode of season 2 is the one with Ross's new girlfriend. And honey, if you've ever been on the wrong side of a love triangle, this episode is going to hit different. The setup. Rachel shows up after the end of season 1, where she is thinking about what it would be like to acknowledge Ross's feelings and give it a go with dating him. So she shows up at the airport, ready to tell Ross she likes him back. She's got flowers. She's ready. She's dressed up. And finally, after a whole season of tension, she's ready to be honest. Except Ross doesn't know she's coming, because he's already moved on, because his friends, Joey and Chandler, suggested move on already. So he's already brought home the new girlfriend, Julie. And that's where the disenfranchised grief starts. Grief 1, the loss of the future that you thought you'd have. Rachel didn't lose Ross. She lost the version of the future where she got to tell him first, where he was still waiting, where she had agency in how this story would unfold. That's disenfranchised grief. Nobody died. Nobody broke up with her yet. But the future she was building in her own head, the one where she walked into that apartment and said, I like you. Let's do something about it. That future's gone. And she has to grieve it while pretending to be happy for him. This is what disenfranchised grief looks like. You can't say I'm devastated because technically nothing happened to you. You can't ask for support because what are you grieving exactly? You have to smile and be the good friend while your heart is breaking over a future that never got a chance to exist. Grief 2, the loss of identity in the group. Rachel wasn't just the girl who liked Ross. She was the girl Ross liked. That was her place in the group dynamic. That was her story. And now Julie exists. And Rachel's identity in that story is just gone. She's no longer the love interest. She's the girl who missed her chance. And that's a secondary loss. That's disenfranchised grief that nobody acknowledges. The show plays it for laughs, but what Rachel's experiencing is a real loss of identity within her community. Yeah, she's still friends with the others, but she's got to do an adjustment shift with Ross. He's not looking at her the same. He's treating her a little different. And she's got to pivot to that while she's now in that role reversal doing the longing that he was doing before. Grief 3 is the loss of control. Rachel can't control Ross's feelings. She can't control that he moved on, and she can't control that Julie exists. So what does she do? She goes back and sleeps with Paolo. Not because she wants him, but because it's the one thing she can control. It's the one way she can reclaim some kind of power in a situation where she has none. This is grief-driven behavior. That's what happens when you're grieving something. You can't name it and nobody's acknowledging it, and you just want to do something that you can have control of. On a side note, we have the haircut subplot, because that matters too. We have Phoebe, who gave haircuts to Joey and Chandler, and Monica thinks, wow, you did such a great job with them. Do me. And Monica asks Phoebe to cut her hair, and Phoebe at first says no, because you're controlling and obsessive and I don't want to. And Monica convinces her to do it, and Phoebe messes it up. And why? Because Monica asked it to be like Demi Moore and Phoebe thought Dudley more. So Monica ended up with a very short, choppy haircut. And here's the thing, Monica's grief over her haircut is acknowledged, and people ask how she is, and people check on her, and people validate that this is a loss worth grieving. And they treat it like a death. Oh, she's not doing good. We got to give her time. And it's actually kind of cool the way they do it, because it's the way people should show up when you're experiencing some kind of loss, especially in disenfranchised grief. And we don't get that quite often enough. Meanwhile, Rachel is grieving the loss of her entire future and nobody's checking in on her. That's the irony, right? Because that's kind of how life happens. When it's something small, we know how to show up for that. When it's something bigger, we don't know what to do, and it's easier for us to pull back instead of staying present and supportive. And that's the contrast the show is making. And it might be accidentally, but it does frame it perfectly for how it really shows up in life. That's disenfranchised grief in true action form. And then we have the tailor subplot and what it says about boundaries. Joey's tailor is crossing boundaries. Chandler needs to get fitted for a suit, and the tailor makes him feel very uncomfortable. And nobody, not even Joey, realizes that the tailor's method is wrong until Chandler points it out. And this is a different kind of grief. This is the grief of realizing that you've been violated and didn't even know it. The grief of lost safety. The grief of not trusting your own judgment. Once Joey realizes it, he starts calling his family members and saying, that isn't how you're supposed to measure pants. And we've all been compromised. And the awareness, the owning of it, the trying to, again, gain control of something that you don't always have control over when it's disenfranchised grief is important to measure. So what this episode teaches us on several levels is that disenfranchised grief is the loss of a future that never happened, the loss of an identity that you thought you had, the loss of control in a situation you can't change, and the loss of safety when you realize something wasn't what you thought. The loss that nobody acknowledges because it's not real enough. And the hardest part, you have to keep showing up. You have to keep being the friend. You have to keep pretending it's fine while your heart is breaking over something you can't even name. And that's what Rachel does. And that's what Joey does. And that's what Monica even does. Because she knows that eventually her hair is going to grow back. And that's what we all do. And that's why this show matters. Because it names the grief that doesn't get named. And you can see the coaching opportunities and moments in this. If the friends supported Rachel even to the slightest amount that they show up for Monica over a haircut, maybe Rachel would feel more seen. Maybe she would feel like she was spiraling less. Maybe she wouldn't have had to go to Ross and say, hey, about Paolo, that was a mistake. That wasn't supposed to happen. She didn't need to explain herself to him. He didn't really care because he's with Julie now. But the fact is, it happened. And she felt she owed it to him and needed to defend herself to let him know I'm still available should something change without actually saying it. So if any of this stuff resonated with you, check out The Naked Grief for more. The space there is private, judgment-free, and we provide practical tools and prompts and guidance that you can use right away. We have multiple styles of support, so you can choose what fits and switch if you need to. There's a path to find your footing, one small step at a time. If you're not ready for therapy or coaching yet, but you know you need something, it's the right place to start. Speaking of right places to start, on March 13th, my book, The Bracing 13, which is a book that offers so many different things. It's a 13-month workbook, a 13-month calendar, a 13-month planner, a 13-month journal for grief, unfinished business, future planning, and emotions of grief. It helps you through all the steps you need to take in those immediate months after a death occurs. At the end, it also allows you to write down what your wishes are so that nobody has to guess for you. And along the way, it gives you coaching moments, breath works, stretching, as well as just that 13-month calendar that begins on the day you open the book. So if you're not sure what you need, this is a great way to start without committing to any support systems, communities, therapists, licensed professionals, or coaches. Something to think about. Also, tomorrow, March 7th, I will be live at the Friends Experience, the one in Vegas, at 5:30. Follow The Naked Grief on Facebook to view this live event. Until next time, da 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 da